I need a new laptop. My current one, the Surface Pro 8, sadly doesn't last as long anymore. It also doesn't sit on my lap like a normal laptop does, and it is nowhere near the performance requirements I need to edit my YouTube videos. I mean, I had to do this to cool it down just to export my last video. Realistically, my only two requirements are that it has a really good battery life and has the performance chops to breeze through video editing. Now, I've been a Windows guy for most of my life. I had a very brief stint with a MacBook Air way back in 2011, but even then I installed Windows on it, because why not? So you'd think I'd go for another Windows laptop. Instead, I decided to try this, the Apple MacBook Pro. I'm not unfamiliar with Macs as I have used them at work in the past, but this is for my main daily driver. And Macs are very different from Windows laptops, from keyboard shortcuts to how you use them, to even software compatibility. My name is Nathaniel, and if you're currently a Windows user and thinking whether or not a MacBook is worth it, I've done the hard yards for you. I'll walk you through my experience covering the good and the bad of switching to a MacBook and if I think it's worth the jump. So let's get into it. The model I decided to get was the 14-inch MacBook Pro with the 12-core CPU, 16-core GPU, and 24 gigs of RAM. It cost me 3,069 Australian dollars with the education savings. And I also paid an extra $207 for the Nano texture coating. And there's a lot to like about this model. First off is the display, or as Apple likes to call it, a Liquid Retina XDR display. In reality, it's a mini LED panel as opposed to an LCD panel more commonly found on other laptops. This allows it to be much brighter than other displays, being able to go up to 1000 nits of brightness normally and 1600 nits when viewing HDR content. And it also has a 120Hz refresh rate, which makes scrolling silky smooth. The vibrancy and clarity are a noticeable step up from what I'm used to on the Surface Pro 8, and it makes video editing and content consumption a much more enjoyable experience. One of its standout features is the Nano texture coating. Like on the S25 Ultra, the coating reduces glare and reflections on its screen. As you can see, compared to the Surface Pro's glossy glass, it dramatically reduces the reflections and glare. And even after I installed a matte screen protector on the Surface Pro, while it did reduce the glare and reflections, the MacBook's screen just does a much better job. Although it is a pretty penny to get, but I believe it's worth the investment. The speakers on the MacBook can only really be justified if you hear them in person. The 6-speaker system consisting of 2 tweeters for the higher notes and 2 sets of dual force cancelling woofers for the mid and low sounds is truly impressive. I find that they really give a depth and warmth to any music or audio you would listen to. One thing that any good laptop should have is a copious amount of ports, and the MacBook Pro doesn't disappoint. There's a total of 3 USB-C ports, 2 on the left and 1 on the right, which I absolutely love. Choices! And they all support Thunderbolt 5, although there aren't really many accessories that are Thunderbolt 5 compatible right now, but if I'm going to keep this laptop for the next several years, I like the fact that it's future-proof. They've also included an HDMI 2.1 port and an SDXC card slot. It's always nice to have these two built into a laptop as opposed to having to carry around a dongle all the time. And finally, you'll also find a standard headphone jack, which is a nice touch. Guess Apple didn't have the courage to delete that off the MacBook, did they?
It comes down to one word: courage.
The MacBook Pro includes a dedicated MagSafe charger, which I wish all laptop manufacturers would implement if they want to build a dedicated charging port. I also opted for the 96-watt charger that will charge the laptop from 0 to 50% in half an hour. However, I actually use USB-C to charge my laptop, as that's because I get power delivery from the same cable that I use to connect my monitor with my MacBook. Battery life is also highly rated, with the 72.4 watt battery being able to provide up to 14 hours of wireless web browsing or up to 22 hours of video streaming. I haven't properly tested it from 100% down to 0, but I've also never run into any situations where I needed to plug it back in when I've taken it off charge for the day. The battery life is a significant improvement over my previous Surface Pro laptop, allowing me to work on the go without worrying about needing to carry the charger with me. One thing I really like about this MacBook is just how good the touchpad experience is. It's a lot of the little things, like being able to use 3 fingers to swipe up to see all of your windows at the same time, or being able to swipe between desktops really quickly. I generally have 2 desktop windows set up, one for personal and the other for work, and it's just a much smoother experience on a MacBook switching between the 2 of them compared to on a Windows laptop. The crown jewel, however, is the M4 Pro chip. Apple really changed the game when it came out with its own silicon ARM chip back in 2020. 4 years later, and I still think the other chip makers have yet to catch up to Apple. It's one of the reasons why I contemplated a MacBook as my new laptop. When I was editing on my Surface Pro, I had to lower the resolution of my videos in CapCut when I was editing them, and DaVinci Resolve was a non-starter for me. I remember trying to export a video in DaVinci, and it took longer to export it than the actual video was. However, with the M4 Pro chip, I'm able to have numerous 4K clips, add all kinds of effects on them, and not have it stutter at all. An 18-minute video using 4K footage was exported in 1080p in roughly 3 minutes and 40 seconds, which is just insane to me. And in battery comparison tests, it has consistently performed much better compared to a lot of its Windows counterparts. Although Qualcomm's Snapdragon X chips have given Apple a run for its money recently. So here's the thing. Apple does an amazing job with the hardware, but where it all comes unstuck for me as a Windows user is the software experience. For example, how shortcuts work. They obviously work differently on a Mac compared to Windows, and I don't know how people have lived with pressing the command button for their shortcuts, because for me, it's like finger gymnastics. Thankfully, I discovered that you can change the shortcut buttons around, so my muscle memory of using my pinky to press Control on Windows kicks in. macOS finally introduced Windo Snapping in macOS 15 Sequoia. However, it's still missing the ability to drag a window to the side of a screen and have it populate that half, or to the top to maximize it. The same features came out in 2009 on Windows 7, 15 years ago. It can't be that hard to code a window to size itself when you drag it to the side, can it? I eventually paid for an app called Magnet, which is a must-have tool for any Mac user. Not only can it allow you to drag screens to the side or to the top to automatically snap to, but it also allows you to customize your own layouts. This is incredibly handy if you have an ultra-wide screen like myself. You can have 4 windows at the same time, or 1 full window in the middle and 2 others on each side. It's entirely up to you. The other annoying thing is how mouse scrolling is set up. If you have a mouse with a scroll wheel like I do, the wheel functions in the same direction as the trackpad. As in, if you push your fingers up to scroll downwards, you need to scroll the wheel upwards in order to move the screen downwards, which is the opposite of what any sane person would do. You scroll downwards to go down. And if you go into the mouse settings to reverse the direction, it also changes the trackpad. Why? It's in 2 separate tabs, so why does changing one toggle also change the other? I found free software that fixes this issue, which is literally called Scroll Reverser. The software allows me to still use the trackpad in one direction and the scroll wheel in the opposite normal direction. For a company that prides itself on being intuitive and simple, I find this incredibly unintuitive and frustrating instead, and it's baffling that such a simple fix isn't a standard option in macOS. The same applies to the side buttons on my mouse. They just don't register when you press them, and I had to find another free software called Sensible Side Buttons to remedy that. How sensible of them. What was actually surprising to me is that despite the hideous notch on the display, it does not contain FaceID. Again, something that Windows has had since 2015, still doesn't exist on a MacBook. And I find it strange that the iPhone has no fingerprint scanner, but a Face ID scanner, and the MacBook has a fingerprint scanner, but no Face ID scanner. Everyone on Windows and on an iPhone know the convenience of looking at the camera to unlock your device or when you want to pay for something. So why isn't it on the MacBook as well? And speaking of convenience, there's no touch screen functionality either. Sometimes it's just easier or quicker to reach and touch the screen to click on what you want rather than move your mouse to do it or to use your fingers to scroll or pinch to zoom. I can only think that it's Apple's way of trying to differentiate its products and get you to buy more things. Want a touchscreen? Get an iPad. Well played, Apple. Well played. Finally, when it comes to gaming, let's be real. You don't buy a MacBook for gaming. You get a Windows computer. And yes, while there's support for games here and there, and even top-tier games like Assassin's Creed Shadows, or Wuthering Waves, or even Cyberpunk, you'd be better off using Windows. On the plus side, because you can't really get immersed in gaming on a MacBook, it means you can just focus on your work instead. After hearing all the good and bad about the MacBook Pro, am I going to stick with it? Or will I return it and go back to Windows? Ultimately, I'm going to stick with it, and there are several reasons why. The first is the chip. It's incredibly powerful, and Intel, AMD, and Qualcomm are still playing catch-up. Although they're a lot closer this year than they were previously. Until they catch up though, I'd say that it's the ideal balance of power and performance without sacrificing battery life. And that is my second reason, battery life. When compared to Windows laptops, you'd either get really great battery life but not enough graphical power, or the performance capability is there but you sacrifice battery life instead. The third reason is the Nano texture coating. I've been living with it on my phones, and if there's an option to have it, then it's a must-have. It significantly reduces glare and makes the display just much easier to see in bright environments. But the last and probably most important reason is I passed the 14-day return window, so I actually can't return it anymore. So I guess I'm stuck with it now. What do you think about my new choice of laptop? Did I make the right decision, or do you think I should have gone with a different laptop instead? Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you liked what you saw, then please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you can see more content like this. Thanks again for staying until the end. Until next time, I'll see you in the next video.